share my screen. Able to see the screen?
Yes, Balaji, I'm able to see the screen.
Okay, fine. So before we get into level 1, so why don't we have just a minute introduction about both of you, because you are all going to work together, right, as part of this mentorship program. So you can introduce yourself to each other.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Probably I can start. Hi, Senthil. I think I've already spoken to Balaji.
Yes.
So I'm actually I work as an agile uh, project manager, and like probably like a part-time Scrum Master as well. So I work for a bank. I'm based in Toronto, Canada. So I've been working on agile-based projects for the past like 4 years, and I do have a few certifications as well. But I think the reason that I joined the Balaji's, I mean, like the agile, yeah, the mentorship thing is like I think to learn more from Balaji, right? Like because in terms of real-time experience, I think that would be a great asset um, apart from what you learn from the other courses. So that is the reason I joined Balaji's course. Yeah, mentorship.
Okay, Sai. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Yeah. Hey, good to know you, Sai, and happy to connect. So my name is Senthil. I'm based out of Chennai in India, and I have about 17 years of industry experience. Started off with the core domain into sales and marketing, and after 7 years of that stint, I got into IT consulting. So I have been doing CRM consulting for various global organizations, till 2011, and post which I have been handling a CRM practice for my company. So the purpose of joining Balaji's program is to enhance my knowledge into the agile space. Primarily, I run portfolios, so there are a lot of Scrum Masters, Agile coaches, and all, in my portfolio. So just wanted to get aligned to the overall business unit's objectives in a holistic way, and of course, continuous learning is something that I keep doing. So I set some targets, every year to get myself enhanced in various areas. So that's the reason why I joined, and good to connect with you as well. Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Super.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Senthil.
1 minute. I'll just create a notepad. Okay, so good to get connected with you both, for me too. So here, okay, so as we have, as you both have enrolled for this level 1 lesson plan, today being the first class, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to walk through each and every line in this particular lesson plan. And then probably from the next class, we can actually get into it. Now, okay, now the first thing is, as far as this particular level 1 lesson plan is considered, it will be suitable for people who are aspiring to become a Scrum Master, or for people who are already playing a role of a partial Agile project manager come Scrum Master, wanted to become a coach. From that perspective, I have formulated the contents. So if you see here, we are starting with the basics of the frameworks in terms of the Scrum, and in terms of how to do an Agile release planning, and some elements or fragments from Agile project management. So typically from a project management point of view, what I wanted to tell is, it is fundamentally on balancing the triple constraints of the project, right? Scope, cost and time. So we are not going to consider the project coordinator or a PMO office kind of a role. Project manager is someone who is going to balance the triple constraints of the project within the available landscape, no? So from that perspective, I will cover up, from the next class we will looking into some of the things. Actually, this point number 1 is interrelated to point number 15, because in point number 15, I have planned to cover the basics of the Scrum, like how to prepare a product backlog, how to do your all your ceremonies of the sprint, and how to conduct a daily stand-up, retrospective, and some slack time between the sprints. Okay, so in the session we will see what do you mean. Basically, a slack time is a gap time between the sprints, and how to combine the Scrum with the XP. XP is the engineering practices, because if you are taking Scrum as a framework, it is going to give only the process orientation or the process alignment. Basically the engineering practices or the technical agility is going to come from the XP in terms of TDD, BDD. So what are the XP practices? I have written over here in point number 13. Test driven development, acceptance test driven development, behavior driven development, feature driven development, story driven development, domain driven design. Based on the domain, based on the contextual need of the domain, can I have a design pattern? Something like that will come in XP together with your CI/CD pipeline, your solid principles from architecture, and also having a technical debt remediation plan. For example, technical debt means if there is a SonarQube, if I'm using SonarQube as a static code analyzer and I see some kind of violations, then I used to create a user story saying reduce code smell by 10%, because someone need to work on it, right? If not, what will happen? All these small technical debts will accumulate and it is going to create noise in the production. So reduce code smell by 10%, which is point number 1. One more thing, generally what you may start looking into it going forward is, whenever your team is doing a retrospective sprint after sprint, right? So whenever you are don't mind about the spellings, okay, because sometimes it may go slightly wrong. Whenever you are doing a retrospective going forward, ensure that the action items what they capture is also translated into user stories, and this story need to be allocated to someone, right? Only then information will become transformation. If not, it will continue to be as a information. So what I used to do practically is, when I do the sprint planning, while we are creating the capacity planning exercise, right? So in the capacity planning exercise, 5%, let's say 5% of effort will be created, or all these retrospective items. Okay. One more thing, when we are talking about the retrospective, we need not think only the sprint. You may need to slowly start thinking about sprint level retrospective, program increment level retrospective, release level retrospective. Because this particular release level is post go live, once you deploy the code. So we start thinking about 3 levels of a retrospective going forward. Okay, so these things will be covered in the basics of Scrum, and then we are getting into Kanban mode. So Kanban is also one of the framework, and if you look into a framework called a Scaled Agile framework, which is called as a SAFe in the market, Kanban has been used extensively across the layers, the team construct, program construct, and the portfolio construct. So we may need to have a good grip on the Kanban, and there is something called a systems thinking approach to introducing Kanban. So in the session I will deep dive into it, but it is like a workshop wherein we will try to see how much of activities are predictable and how much of activities are coming on a ad hoc manner, so that I can decide, can I go with sprint plus Kanban, or can I go with only Kanban, or some kind of a customized model wherein I will take a sprint and Kanban, which is called as a Scrumban in the industry, something like that. So for me to take a decision, I need to have knowledge on the framework, So I have formulated Kanban here, followed by the Kanban metrics. In Kanban metrics, we have, these are the metrics. Okay, let me type here. 1 minute. Okay, for example, lead time, cycle time, throughput, cumulative flow diagram, control charts. These are the 5 typically used metrics in the Kanban world. So these metrics also we will see in the Kanban session. Okay, then the fourth thing what I planned is Agile transformation basics. Okay, so how to do an agile transformation, where to start the journey, what to do, what actually not to do, and then probably some heads up on the DevOps delivery pipeline. So what I planned is that in terms of this, uh, one second. Okay, in terms of this agile transformation, what I planned is that I will be introducing you to something called as an outcome based plan, which is called OBP. How will you do an outcome based plan for your client so that it resonates well with the ecosystem? Say for example, reduce cycle time by 10% sprint after sprint. Means from first sprint to second sprint to third sprint, I am creating an objective or an outcome saying my cycle time need to be reduced by 10% sprint after sprint. Because why am I doing this is possibly when I did a retrospective, one of the finding is we are taking more time to ship the product. It could be a user story or a feature. So since we are taking more time, are there any delays? Are there any blockers? Are there any impediments which is coming on the way to curtail the flow of a value? So I am creating a OBP called reduce cycle time. This is just an example. In the detailed session, I will give you some 16 outcomes. For all the 16 outcomes, because once you create an outcome, you can directly map it to the assessment also, right? Because when you do an agile maturity assessment, one need to be clear upon what are the outcomes based on which I am embarking upon my transformation journey. So let me take a pause here. Anyone wanted to tell anything or ask anything based on these 3 or 4 lines what I told?
So, Balaji, now we are normally hearing about only Scrum, right? When it comes to Agile, how is the adoption to Kanban, and other models within Agile?
Okay. So first of all, what actually happens is the industry is fixing the framework and then talking about agile transformation, which is indeed a wrong approach. The correct approach is get into the contextual requirement of the landscape and then decide which framework to use. Because there are places where Kanban will give more outcomes than if you go by a sprint. So deciding a framework already and then getting into transformation may not be the most appropriate way to do. One need to study the ecosystem and possibly see. Yesterday I was talking to one more person. So what I recommended him is you go with the sprint, but going with the sprint does not mean we should not take some best practices from Kanban. We can take some best practices from Kanban like putting a WIP limit, work in progress limit on the task board. We can create swim lanes in our task board wherein you are taking concepts from Kanban called a class of services. Because when your backlog is a heterogeneous, I cannot go with a sprint. I cannot go with a pure sprint. That's what I'm actually trying to tell.
What is the meaning of the backlogs being heterogeneous?
Okay, backlog being heterogeneous. Okay, that's a good question, which you will cover in Kanban. But to quickly answer your question is, heterogeneous backlog means my backlog is not containing only user stories. It contains change request, it contains defects, incident and support tickets, maintenance activity, compliance activity, tech refresh initiatives, so many activities, right? So it is called heterogeneous backlog.
Got it. Okay.
So heterogeneous is a term which, okay, I am using as part of my vocabulary. There is nothing called heterogeneous as such defined in the books. But practically, I am saying, generally when you take your container, you have multiple things in it. Some of the balls are red color, some of the balls are yellow color, some of the balls are green color. So green color balls are compliance stories. So when there is a heterogeneous backlog, one process policy for all work item types will not make relevance, right? Because my production defect has a higher criticality. I cannot respond to my user story the same way as much I responding to a production defect. So what I suggest is you start with sprint, which is nothing wrong, but don't always think only about the sprint. We need to take some best practices from some other frameworks and then plug and play it on the go. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, actually, Balaji, like in terms of Kanban, I mean, probably not now, but when we get into it, like, because Kanban usually has a commitment to start, but there is no commitment to end, right? So, I mean, once we get into it, I just want to learn, I mean, from your experience, like, if at all we need to implement Kanban, like, how do you convince the senior management that, I mean, even though there is no commitment to end, like, how do you, I mean, like, make sure that the Kanban implementation works, right? Because if you take
Okay.
Scrum, it's a time boxed event, so we know that, you know what, at the end of 10 sprints, we'll be able to accomplish so many stories, right? But Kanban
Okay.
without the time box, it's a pretty
All right.
challenging thing.
So, from my experience, Kanban can be implemented in two ways. Either you don't time box it, or you can still time box your Kanban also. You can still time box your activities within Kanban also. Because what happens, no, let me actually tell you. If you have an incident or a support ticket which has an SLA breach on 1st June, let's say, today is the 25th of May, and there is a class of service called a fixed date, right? So if I don't fix it within 1st June, it is going to escalate. So in one way or other, the concept of a time box is creeping in, right? Depending upon the work item type. So my suggestion is, the way I have handled this, I will never tell my client I am going to use Kanban. But what I used to do is, I will start with a sprint and I will keep going on all the sprint ceremonies. Slowly, I will take one by one one by one concepts from Kanban, and I start implementing it because I have seen value. But if you tell them that I'm going to use Kanban, they will make a big noise, generally speaking. Why are you using Kanban? But what I'm saying is, look into the fit for a purpose. The fit for purpose is more important rather than talking about which particular framework to use. That point need to be kept in mind. Because the moment I start putting work in progress limit on my task board, even in my sprint task board, the behavior of the team changes. Because that is a work in progress, I need to start finishing rather than it's told, no. Let me just ping here instead of saying, so that you can understand. It is a concept in Kanban saying, stop starting, start finishing. Whatever you already started, first finish it. Then you can start something new, because starting alone itself will not give a business value. It is finishing which is giving the business value. So this is one of the fundamentals of a Kanban, and I want to infuse this behavior to my team. And how will I do if I don't take some best practice from the Kanban? Right. So what I used to do is, I still go with some of the practices of Kanban, but I will not openly declare saying that I am using Kanban. Within the sprint model, slowly I will take one by one, because sometimes when we do a retrospective also, no, we will ask the team, okay, so do you think that any other process change need to be done? Then one person will say, hey, if I put a WIP limit on my task board, probably the behavior of the team will change. Actually, I am taking the WIP limits from the Kanban only. So you see it, and then you need to drive the show notes, because that's where your experience as an individual comes. My say is no, maybe for some of the questions you can park aside for no, because I'm introducing you to the table of contents of the book. We are not going to read the book now. So once we are done with the lesson plan, when we deep dive into it, probably we can look into that topics. Okay. Okay, in agile transformation basis, we will cover something called as an outcome-based plan. I will explain you. We have a model called a Basecamp model. I will explain you Basecamp 1 and Basecamp 2. But to introduction, it is like a climbing the hill. For example, you start from a place and then go to a place. Then once again you start from a place and go to a place. So many people think, or rather, generally people think agile transformation is like moving from a point A to point B, which is completely wrong. The actual agile transformation is, it is like this, climbing the staircases, right? Like, you need to sustain here for some time on the maturity level 1. Then you improve. Once again, you need to sustain here for some time. So it will go like this, right? So if you say this as a level 1 and this as a level 2, distinctive business outcomes, distinctive characteristic features are evaluated and assessed Okay, in this levels, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. So what are they, how to do all those things we will cover in the session. Okay. Then DevOps delivery pipeline, because from an interview point of view, what I felt is nowadays people are asking, explain your DevOps pipeline. In the DevOps itself, we have greenfield versus brownfield, right? Greenfield is for newly developing projects. Brownfield is for enhancement and maintenance kind of a projects. So how will you strategize your DevOps pipeline based on this? And some advanced concepts are there in a DevOps like dark launchers, feature toggles, canary releases, single code branching release strategy. Then we have something called blue-green zone deployments. Those things we will cover in the DevOps advanced concepts. But to quickly give you what is that I'm intended to tell is, if you go here, you need to be clear on one of the pipeline at least. For example, see, either you take one pipeline like this. I used to generally take this. 1 minute, yeah. Let it load. All right, this one. You take this particular image. This is called a DevOps delivery pipeline. We need to understand this particular image. One way is you either take this image or you take your own DevOps delivery pipeline, which has been implemented by your project team members, and then you can talk to your technical leads or architects to quickly get an overall view. So my perspective to actually this is, don't start understanding the tools. Tools will come later. Understand the business workflow first. What am I really doing in the pipeline? I am checking out a code. I am doing a unit testing. Fine. Then we have some quality control gateways. Then I'm deploying. Then I'm doing some integration testing. Then probably you may need to think about your system integration testing, regression testing, performance testing, and the user acceptance testing. There is one more testing if you want to do operational acceptance testing. So my suggestion to you is, let us come to the tools part later. First, focus on the workflow. Then take one tool from each of the block. You can take a Git from here. You can take Maven from here. From here you can take a SonarQube. Here you can take a Rundeck and a Rackspace. Here I generally take a JUnit with Selenium Cucumber integration. And in the pom.xml, we have a file called project object model.xml. There we go there, and then we give J artifact ID is equal to this particular Cucumber, the plugin names and all. So once I give it and then run it, it will work out. So what I'm trying to say, look into the workflow, then you map a tool. So I just wanted, in the actual session, we will take a delivery pipeline and then we will understand it. And this is something called a downtime. Downtime means there is an expansion here in a lean. Did I copied it? Sorry, no. Downtime plus lean, defects, overproduction. These are all the waste. Okay, these are all 8 types of waste. Lean and agile go hand in hand. So basically they are two sides of the same coin. That is the reason I have included some concepts of a lean. Now, what we need to keep in mind is this particular waste is more on a Toyota manufacturing kind of a setup, because lean came from the automobile industry only, right? The manufacturing industry. Now, we need to see, given these 8 types of waste, what will be the equivalent waste in the IT context in our own landscape. So these concepts will be dealt over there. Okay. Then we will talk about the coaching models. We have a coaching model called GROW, Agile Fluency Model, and ATKAR. ATKAR is more on a change management model, but still I have put it in the coaching model here. Agile Coaching Competency Framework. This very diagram is actually that. This very diagram, what I pasted here, is an Agile Coaching Competency Framework, wherein you have transformation mastery, technical mastery, business mastery. Now, if you take me, I am more into transformation mastery, whereas some people are more into technical mastery, which is called software craftsmanship, in terms of actually getting things done, in terms of mock programming, CI/CD, pipeline strategies, all those things. Okay. So this particular aspect we will cover over there. Okay. Let me again take a pause. Anything you wanted to share, or how do you go with the flow now? I'm just explaining, okay? By the way, I'm just explaining only the topics. I'm not getting into it, getting into the topics. Any feedback?
It's fine.
Okay, fine. See, now if we look into the lesson plan, no, definitely we are going to talk about Scrum and Kanban, fully agreed. But it is not only about Scrum and Kanban, because as the very word Agile transformation has two compartments, right? You need to know on the Agile part, then you need to know on the transformation part. And to know on the transformation part, we need to know what are all the frameworks there in the market, how I can do a change management. Okay, so these frameworks I have included Scrum of Scrum, SAFe, Scaled Agile Framework, Less and Less Huge, and a DAD, Discipline Agile Delivery. Actually speaking, a DAD is more of a toolkit, not really a scalable model, but still I put it when I wrote this article. Then we have Nexus and the Spotify model. Okay, can someone tell me why do we need a scaling framework or a model in the first place? What thoughts come to your mind?
Okay, so for example, like at a team level or a scrum team level, right? It is basically for a smaller team. Like Scrum is like maybe like 8 members or something like that, right? But
Correct.
at a program level, if you're going to implement at a program level, then you need to scale the agile practices. That's where the scaled agile comes into the picture.
Correct. Okay. All right. Okay. Sendil, do you want to add anything, Sendil?
I think from a project perspective, I think Scrum is predominantly used. And when it comes to large-scale transformations, maybe I've heard about SAFe, we have implemented SAFe in one of our projects for Cisco.
Okay.
So that was primarily a large-scale transformation initiative that Cisco has brought in. So their SAFe was adopted.
Okay. So the fundamental thing, what are we trying to say is, if there are team of teams or a multi-team layer only with a particular Scrum or Kanban, I cannot scale it up, right? Because if I have 15 teams and each team consisting of 7 or 8 members, so if I'm going to deal even for 120 members, I cannot manage the show only with the Scrum and the Kanban, because Scrum and Kanban perfectly fine. But how are you do? So okay, now here I want to introduce you to get two terms. One is horizontal scaling. When I say horizontal scaling in this context is, within a single program, I have implemented a Scrum for 2 teams. Can I implement Scrum or Kanban for 3, 4 and 5 teams, which is called horizontal scaling. Now when I talk about vertical scaling, I have implemented Scrum successfully at a team level. Can I go to a program layer? Can I go to a portfolio layer? So typically in practical situation, what may happen is your program layer will be mapped to the line of businesses of the client, and your portfolio level will be mapped to the product group. One product group will have multiple product lines, and product line will be mapped to an LOB. So scaling models will give you some structured approach to actually think, formulate, strategize and implement when you are dealing at a team level, both horizontally and vertically. So from that point of view, the scaling model, here I will introduce my customized agile framework also in the actual session. Now let us go to something called business agility and the enterprise agility. Okay. Do you think there are, okay, can someone say just by, no, do you feel there is any difference between business agility and the enterprise agility, or what thoughts come to your mind when you hear these terms? I'm sure in the JDs you might have heard these terms, no, business agility or enterprise agility.
I mean, agility, like I think, sorry, Bala, even you brought an example, right? Like the last session that we had on Saturday. So basically, it all depends on how fast the organization can adapt, right? Uh, to maybe changing requirements or something like that. But enterprise agility also sounds the same as
Same thing.
business
Okay.
agility.
Kind of a same. Okay. Now let me share my own perspectives based upon business agility. Wherever you are seeing the word business agility going forward, you can replace it with a term called a strategic adaptability. Means, does my company has adaptability at a strategy level? Okay. Enterprise agility is also called as a organizational agility, because your organization is your enterprise, right? In this context, This is a combination of three main things. Actually speaking, enterprise agility is a combination of three main things. Sorry, one second. First thing, building a team level predictable delivery engine plus having some kind of objectivity in terms of prioritization. Where do I need to put my money, right? For example, you need to prioritize which particular investment which I need to do based on the ROI. Then the third thing is your business agility. So your business agility is a subset of your enterprise agility. Let me give one of a simple example. In March 2020, last year, in March 2020, when this COVID came into picture, the COVID started creating impacts for an organization called Ford, which is a typical manufacturing domain, who is manufacturing automobiles and the car. Unfortunately, due to COVID, all the plants in Europe, UK, US, everything went for a halt. Now, at the time, what Ford had done is, Ford started manufacturing ventilators. Ford started manufacturing PPE, personal protection equipment devices, because the market is running towards in a shortfall or a shortage of ventilators and PPEs. So, that is an excellent example of a strategic adaptability, means responding to the need rather than just following a plan. So that point we need to keep in mind. Traditional waterfall model is always plan driven, whereas agile engagement is always value driven. I am okay to change the plan as long as it is giving business value to my customer. So how do you change it? There are some techniques, tools, but much of the thing will come out of experience. The techniques and tools will be enablers for you. So strategic adaptability is actually one among the things. The second example what comes to my mind is, ITC group of companies had entered into a partnership with Domino Pizza during last year, April-May time, because Domino Pizza guys, due to this COVID, people are not willing to order any pizza, burgers and all, right? The Domino Pizza's delivery guys are willing to work, but they don't have work. Whereas ITC group of company has a separate division for FMCG and this provisions, grocery and all. So they have actually packed it, but there is no one there to go and deliver the product to the home of the customer. So both the needs complemented each other. So both of them entered into a partnership. This is called a strategic adaptability. What if I do now, even in the situation of a VUCA world where volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity is there, can I do something by combining two things or doing something so that I shift my focus of business from what am I currently doing to what the market is trending towards? This is a business agility. Now, an organization may not survive only if it has only business agility, right? Someone need to do the ground level work also, right? So you still need a team level, you need a predictable team which keeps on churning out the value, and you have a business agility at a portfolio level, which is at a strategy level, and then, okay, which particular initiative to fund, based on my quarterly priorities. I need some objectivity in that. So these three things combined is called as an enterprise agility. Any questions or any comments?
So business agility is more dynamic, right? It looks at the current situation and gets the planning accordingly.
Yeah, agility itself is a vector quantity. It has both speed and direction. The speed comes from the iterations or the sprints. Direction comes from the program increment objective.
Okay.
See, it is not just about the speed, no. That's what I'm trying to tell. It is not about only the speed. You have a direction to the speed. So if I take my car and then go at a very high speed in a wrong, instead of turning left, if I turn right and go, then it's not going to add any meaning. So agility is a vector quantity. One is the speed, because speed comes at an efficiency layer, whereas direction comes at an effectiveness layer. So it has both.
Got it, yeah.
Because generally, if you see, if you talk about program layer, Program layer and the team layer will talk about operational efficiency. Can I do it fast? Something like that. Whereas if you go to the portfolio layer, they will talk more about the strategic thinking. Am I doing the right thing? Then the next question comes, am I doing it in the right way? So doing things right is something different from doing the right things. So we will cover it in the classes. Okay. I'm just giving you what are we going to discuss.
Sure. Yeah.
Fine. See, because the topic is very huge, right? We need to slice the cake and then take one piece in one class. Okay. So what I'm saying is those concepts will be covered here. Then we will talk about organization change management models. Carter's 8-step change management model, polarization model. There are some models. See, now the point is either in an interview or either in your on the ground work, it is always better if you use a model which is a proven success in the industry so that your answers and approach have a credibility. I'm not saying you to copy paste it. All that I'm trying to say is when you are formulating a strategy to do organization change management, it is always better to know what's there in the industry, take references from there, and then link it. So that when you present it to your client or when you present it in the interview, your answers will be received in a much more credible rather than talking only generic answers. So from that perspective, we will cover this topic. See, here what we will do, we will touch upon SAFe. Whereas here we are going to see how I can use SAFe as a framework to do an agile transformation. So the topic differs between 7 and 10. Okay. Then we will look into agile transformation metrics and the dashboards. 11 and 12 will go combinedly. Product space of agility metrics, process mechanism metrics, the team level metrics, stakeholder metrics. Okay, now let me ask you a question. Generally, what metrics come to your mind generally in the space of agile and all? Can you tell some metrics?
Burn down charts.
Okay.
Health of the product backlog health.
Okay, something on the health index of the product backlog. Okay.
And as Senthil mentioned, the charts, right? The burn down chart,
burn up chart,
something burn down chart, and the
now
burn down chart.
Yeah, very good. So as you do at a sprint level, you can go at a PI level burn up, burn down, and a release level burn up, burn down. Correct? Okay. See, now generally my way of presenting the answer is when someone asks you about metrics, as you have rightly mentioned, it is better to call out the logical quadrants first. Don't jump into the answers immediately. Create a logical quadrant. Product space of agility, process mechanism. Product space of agility is more on the product road mapping, product backlog, and the product owner touchpoint related things. Process mechanism is more on the Scrum Master related things. For example, does my Scrum Master maintain an impediment tracker? Does my Scrum Master measure the aging of the impediments? Because aging of the impediments is a direct indication of how your Scrum Master is working there. See, sometimes I understand there could be some dependencies because of external third-party vendors and the suppliers. But if your Scrum Master is not maintaining an impediment tracker, if the impediments, if the aging of the impediments are not being measured and captured, then I don't think that particular team will become a will actually become a high performing team in the long run. So you need to ask your Scrum Master, do you maintain your impediment tracker? Or at least whether impediments have been logged in the Jira. Generally in the Jira, under a subtask, we actually use to log a impediment. So Scrum Master related metrics. Second thing is the development team related metrics. Fourth is the stakeholder engagement metrics. Like this, you need to visualize logical quadrants. The other way to visualize is team level metrics, program layer metrics, and portfolio level metrics. The other way to look at the metrics is based on the framework, right? If you are using Kanban, then you have a distinctively separate set of metrics. If you are using SAFe, then SAFe has its own metrics. So it could be one based on the framework or based on the level of execution or operation of the metrics or based on the quadrant approach to the metrics. So holistically, we need to present everything. If you present like this, not only the answer is very logically bucketized, the person who receives the answer will also feel comfortable. receptivity will be more. So we will see in the class how to do all these things, okay? See, for example, let me give an example here. 1 minute, yeah. Sorry. Now, 1 minute, let me give an example. See, I am taking a term called a throughput. So what is it? What is throughput is absolute number, because your velocity is a relative number, right? Absolute number of count hash. Count hash of what? That what will be defined by the context. So I am not defining it here now. For example, when someone asks me, hey, what is your throughput at a epic level? Okay, what is your throughput at a portfolio level? Then they are asking epic or sub-epic level throughput. How many epics are a sub-epic completed per time factor? So you can take per 6 months. Whereas at a program layer, if someone is asking me what is your throughput, then it means number of features completed per quarter, right? Per quarter. Because see, it doesn't make sense if I put here per month, because we all know that epic and sub-epics are large initiatives, and the granularity of the x-axis should be fixed depending upon the context of the y-axis in a graph. So since my y-axis is epic and sub-epic, it makes more relevance to take count once in 6 months. Whereas program is much you have actually sliced that sub-epic into features. So you can put it as a per quarter, or else you can tell one more thing: number of incidents fixed per week. So these kind of metrics which we will see over there. So okay, what I'm saying is that the same metric called the throughput, depending upon the layer of execution or the operation, what we measure inside the throughput significantly differs. So those things we will be discussing in the metrics, okay? And then we will go to extreme programming, which I told you when I explained you here. This deals with the engineering practices. And these things and all will anyway be taken care, okay? Resume preparation, mock interview. Okay, now we are getting into important topic. This is an important topic. Agile contracting model. It will take 1 hour minimum. So there we will see what are the different. So any thoughts, anyone wanted to share anything on Agile contracting model, which you have done or heard about? Any kind of an RFP you have written or given inputs to an RFP or heard about any contracting model?
No, so far it has been all generic RFPs where we propose agile model as Scrum. Beyond that, we haven't done anything in depth.
Yeah. So the building is still done on a time and material, right? Or how is that? Filling timesheets.
Correct. Majority that way. Some of them will be from a managed services perspective from the client side. Right. So there it is only staffing for us.
Okay. So here in this model, we have some 7 or 8 models in Agile contract. See, I will be able to tell you these are all the 7 models, in which scenario you will be using, what are the pros and cons of all the model. But which model you pick it up and then put it, that you need to be very closer to the landscape, okay? Because only a guy who is working on the landscape can answer that question. But I can give you all the pointers on different models, pros and cons of the models, which one to use where. But you need to pick it up and then use it in your model. And every model has a pros and cons. There is no one model which is going to be a perfect solution. We need to look into the win-win situation between the client and the vendor and then formulate a model. Okay, fine. So in the class we will see, when the session comes, I will explain you, I will send you the documents also. So we'll get into this. Design thinking, system thinking, lean thinking, and the value stream mapping. See, design thinking is more on the product space. For example, see, for example, 6 months back, I conducted a design thinking workshop. So when the management told me to conduct a design thinking workshop, the first question what I asked is, who are my target audience? Then they asked me, why are you asking that? Anyway, the topic has been given. That's not like that. Because if I am taking design thinking to a product owner and a product manager, I will take it slightly different. If I take it to a scrum master or my team members, I will take it slightly different. So topic alone is not important. Who is my target audience? Based on them, I will address their personalized need. So design thinking is more on user persona, like both the implicit needs and the explicit needs of the client or customer need to be known. So creating a user persona, creating a empathy mapping, customer journey mapping, validating a proof of concept or a prototype, everything will come under a design thinking. Then we look into system thinking. System thinking is end-to-end flow optimization. Right from the beginning till the end of the value chain, whether the overall flow is getting optimized or not. So system thinking will go hand in hand with the value stream mapping. Okay. Lean thinking is more on a removing the waste. For example, see here, I showed you something, right? In that 1 second, yeah. I see in the next class what I'll do, I'll put all these things organized. I will wrote an article also, right? Something like this. For me to remove the waste, first I need to do this workshop with the team. What are all the waste we find in our ecosystem, and what is the type of waste it is. Then you can work on removing the waste. So this is called a lean thinking. Now let me explain you value stream mapping on a high level. For example, see here, flow efficiency. Okay, you take this diagram, this one. In this one, what happens is someone begins the work, then waiting. Again, someone is working, waiting. Again, working, waiting. So my flow efficiency is active time divided by total time into 100. So for your own team, be it a Scrum team or a Kanban team, if someone asks you what is the flow efficiency percentage, you should be able to tell as an agile coach. So if you look into this flow efficiency, what thoughts generally come to your mind? I mean, see, sometimes I will be asking you questions deliberately, because from that questions only I can come to know your level of thinking. Okay, so it's a part of the flow. So what thoughts come to your mind when you look into this board?
Yeah, it all depends on the flow of work, right? For example, if like if it is moved, I mean, like from one column to another, for example, from development to code review, if there is any bottleneck, then the flow will be affected, or else if there is some sort of starvation as well, right? If the other team, for example, testing team is waiting for work, means even then the flow will be affected.
Okay, now let us take our own time. For everyone, we have total time as 24 hours in a day, right? Agreed. Active time is whatever time you think has productively given you some value. Of course, value is a subjective phenomenon. What is value in your definition may not agree with me, but generally value is something which is giving some sustained benefit to us, both in terms of health or all other aspects of life. So, for example, 1 hour I am actually doing a exercise, and 4 hours I am taking something which is giving me value, working something. So you need to define the value in that context. Now, if you are telling that out of 24 hours in a day, I think I am spending only 8 hours productively per day, then 8 by 24 into 100, which will be your own flow efficiency. I'm just giving a rough analogy. Okay. Now, see, in practical situations, in some cases, someone will send a mail to one guy. That guy will forward that mail to someone else. And someone else, what he will do? He will just take 3 days of time to plus a guy. You might have seen, in some mails they will write plus Shankar. Okay. And then he will loop that Shankar in that mail. Just to plus a guy, if someone is taking 3 days, then you see the flow efficiency. The work would have started in the month of March. By the time the work is completed, it is in the month of June, and by the time the value of the work is also getting diluted. So that is why we are saying don't do local optimization, don't do suboptimal solutions, look for end-to-end flow. For example, you are placing a requirement to Amazon or Flipkart to purchase something on a Friday. You are interested from the moment I placed an order, how long it is going to take for me. You are not really interested whether the request is picked up by Amazon on Saturday morning or Sunday morning or Monday morning. All that I needed is from the moment I placed an order, how long it is going to take for me to deliver the product to my home. The internal cycle time you are not interested. You are interested in the entire lead time. So we need to map out the flow. If you go to Rally, we have portfolio Kanban board wherein you can filter upon your epic and sub-epic and then map out the flow, then see how long it takes and calculate the flow efficiency. This is called a value stream mapping. Value stream mapping. Now what you can do parallelly is, you need not wait for the class. You can go to YouTube videos and start seeing these things. If you put value stream mapping plus Kanban, some guy will come and then they explain the entire flow. So from there also you can learn it. Okay, so let me show you a practical sheet now. For example, I told about this static, right? I'll show you a sheet which I used real time. See this sheet. This is a real time executed sheet. What I did is, what we have done as a coaches group is, we called out the work item types and we called out what is planned, what is unplanned, from where the demand comes, what is the duration, how long it takes to process the demand, and we have created a class of services, and we also trying to understand from here where it goes. Means I am trying to understand the upstream and the downstream of the entire flow and then taking a judgment. I am not just looking one column and then saying. So once I complete this concept to you, I will send this sheet. By sending this sheet now doesn't make much of relevance. So we can hold on for some days. Okay. So we will go into this. So this is called value stream mapping. Mock interview I can do, I can give feedback. I will send you a transformation playbook. See, playbook is something, for example, a particular coach has been part of the team for a 10 months. And once he has completed the coaching, that particular coach will be disengaged from the team. Now, what is the guarantee that the team will continue to maintain the agility? How are they going to sustain the momentum? For that, we have created a playbook. So this playbook will actually tell, in the absence of the coach, it will be like a reference guide. It's something like a user manual for a washing machine. You can see the manual guide, okay, and then you can execute it, right? Similarly, this playbook need to be created by the coaches, and this playbook need to be handed over, so that in the absence of the coach, that playbook will serve as a reference one. Then agile architecture and the emergent design pattern. This we will see. Then I will take you Jira Rally version 1 basics. Okay. Now let me take a pause because I have given a walkthrough of on a high level. So any thoughts or suggestions or questions to me, or how do you feel? Do you feel little bit something you learned now today from today's session, or how do you feel?
Yeah, certainly. I think this looks very interesting and very motivating, Balaji. Okay. There are quite a good spread of concepts and theories that is going to come in. That's what I'm hoping. My only thought is there a different way to look at implementation projects and support projects when it comes to Agile? If so, what are the major differences?
Okay, so what we need to see is implementation means you are asking from the development projects, right? Or what do you mean by implementation?
Correct. So implementation is primarily you start developing a new product, right, end to end.
Correct.
Whereas support I meant is like for the product that has been done. Okay. How is the maintenance going on?
For that kind of activity only, this static template will be one of the good place to start, right? For example, here in the source of demand, we are putting multiple sources from where I get input, and here I'm putting different work item types also. So what I'm trying to say is, at an execution level, what you need to do is, Analyze the pattern of the input demand consistently for a month at least, and then see the pattern. For example, how much is predictable, how much is a ad hoc request. So out of 100, one need to have clarity. Let's say 55 to 60% of work is being predictable, which is a planned work. When I say predictable, it's a planned work. Whereas remaining 30-40, it will come on a need basis. Okay, suddenly a ticket may come, suddenly a defect may come. So the 30-40 could be a proportionate for unplanned activities. Once I have clarity on this planned versus unplanned, then you need to tweak your process policies explicitly how to handle it. Because without having clarity on the quantum of this, I cannot come with a process methodology to handle it, so, which could be one part to it. The other part to it is now you may need to start creating some kind of a guidelines on a high level. For example, defect management guideline. I will show you. See, I don't want to send you people bunch of documents on the first day, because you will download and then you will don't know which document to use where. So that should happen incrementally as we progress in the class. For example, see, if there is a defect, people should not ask you what to do. You need to create like what I have created like here, defect management guideline. See, before go live, if it comes, what to do. After go live, what to do. I created this. I then mapped it to a tool called a Rally, because we have used Rally, and then this will be socialized with the team, and then it will be kept in a SharePoint or a shared drive. And one more thing you need to do is, you need to create a working agreement in the team charter template, something like this, when you are beginning the exercise. Okay, something like this. See, purpose, how do you measure success, what is your definition of done. And the definition of done, we need to be very careful. We have 3 levels of a definition of done: sprint level, program increment level, release level. So what I'm trying to say, just to cut a long story short, is have a good command or good knowledge on what is the input flow rate, what are all the different work item types, what could be the percentage distribution of it, which is from the upstream side. Have clarity on the downstream consumption, how fast the downstream is willing to consume it. Then you need to come up with a process which will mix and match the demand and the supply. So for
no, absolutely. I got it. With reference to the template that you have shared earlier, right? So I think that is more talking on an end-to-end support engagement, where you capture incidents,
but here
requests.
we have no Senthil, new development and enhancements.
Correct. No, I completely agree. So new development and enhancements, see, it can come through in the form of a CR primarily. Right now, what I am actually visualizing is, see, when I start a new, let's say, a future development, which is very fresh for the organization. Okay, at that time we will be driven with user stories.
No, hold on. The other way to handle it is, let me tell you, 1 minute. Give me a minute.
Sure, yeah.
What I was thinking, no, okay, I'll close all these unwanted things, yeah, and then I'll focus only on this. See, what you need to do, no, you need to execute, you need to create workflow states, I believe. Workflow state means, I will tell like here, for example, if you have a feature, why don't we create the workflow state first? For example, discovery, define, design, implementation, and done. This should be your task board columns as far as the feature is considered. See, everything is a board. Whether it's a task board or a program board or a portfolio board, it is only depending upon the column names the board changes, right? So in your feature board, ideally speaking, you need to have some workflow state clearly defining discovery of the feature, defining the feature, designing the feature, implementation, and done. Now, it is fully agreed, not all features need to go through the entire funnel, because depending upon the attribute of the feature, depending upon the characteristic nature of the feature, some features may not go through design and the implementation or something like that. So what I'm saying is that you create a workflow state like this, then you create varieties of features here. something like this. This particular feature is doing these activities, Once
Sure,
you are
sure, sure.
like this, if you create come to me, then I will be in a better position to help you back.
No, this is very clear. Yeah, this is exactly what I was looking at.
Is it so?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And one more thing, what we need to know is the exit criteria of this could be the entry criteria of the next state. So you need to define. See what I'm saying. If I want to put it in one word, I am talking about definition of ready of a feature. Like we have definition of ready at a user story level. Let us now start thinking one level more. Definition of ready at a feature level. Definition of ready at a epic layer. Now, one more thing what you need to do is, once you are slowly shifting the gears of your car. So what you need to do is, on top of your team level ceremonies, which you usually do, you need to start putting your program level cadences. I have written an article in the LinkedIn. I will share it to you. Just give me some time. In program level cadences, feature backlog refinement, product owner sync up, product manager sync up, ART sync up, scrum of scrum, those cadences. But don't stop there. Then slowly shift your gear to portfolio level cadences, epic and sub epic cleanup. Then enterprise business capability model and mapping the investment themes back to the portfolio KPIs. So when you start doing something, a good job at epic level and feature level, all the benefits will flow down to the user story. If not, what will happen? Problems will start. You understood, no? You are doing something there, so the benefits are bound to come over here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I recently also wrote an article on it. You can go through my post and article. See, I will send the sheets one by one. I don't want to send a dump of materials and then no. So incrementally, as and when the class get complete, those concepts. See, for example, I created like this. I don't know whether I showed it to you people in any post. See, for example, I created the sheet flow orchestration. Like this, you need to have a visibility. You need to talk to your product owner or product management or the head of the product group saying that, do we have visibility like this? Across the timeline, what are all the epics and the sub-epics am I going to position it? And if which particular feature will go in which particular program increment? If you have clarity at this level, then seamlessly value will start flowing. Okay.
Yeah.
Something like this. See, I'm just giving you a visualization. You can contextualize it later. And one more thing, I will tell you where you should not contextualize also. There are some places where you should not contextualize deliberately. I will tell you when I start taking safe. There are some places you should not contextualize. Because if you are contextualizing it, you are not having the benchmark standard to compare against with. So people saying it contextualize, yes, we will contextualize at the right time, but not now. See, for example, one of my client manager told, I have done a safe assessment. I directly took it from Scaled Agile framework. Then immediately those people told, you are an experienced Agile coach. You need to contextualize it. I told, yes, I also know it. I will contextualize it later, not now. Because if I contextualize the sheet now, as per the context, against what I will compare? For me to compare, I need two columns, actual result and the expected result. You are now telling me to change the expected result in the name of a contextualization. So if I change the column called expected result, against what will I compare this column called the actual result? So there are some places where we should not contextualize. Once you do an assessment, then we need to contextualize it. Because sometimes they will talk to me as if I don't know about all these things. I know about this, but deliberately I'm not doing it now because I have a purpose behind it. So those things we will see, those nuances and intricate aspects in that. Okay.
Sure, Balaji. Yeah.
Okay, happy with the class because today is the first class for you both, right? So are you happy with the class?
No, very happy. I think it's going in the right direction. Quite excited to see.
Yeah. So now we have covered a little bit on the breadth of the subject. Now we will take piece by piece, class after class. so that after 6 or 7 classes itself, your confidence level will be really good. So by the end of the lesson plan 1, you have breadth and depth, and also templates will be given, which you can customize for your on the field activity.
Sure, yeah.
Sounds good, Balaji. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, fine then. So we will stop the recording. You will get the recording anyway.